right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dear beloved guests, how are you? This is Anila and Brother Hassan. I'm talking to you.
Oh, hey. Assalamualaikum.
I'm
Talking to your audience.
Yeah.
It's you. It's just us here, mashallah. But no, it's so good to have you guys here. That clay couple, the world-renowned clay couple, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum to everybody who's joining. Our tradition is that we come on, we give salams, we greet one another. We start off with that barakah. So if you are here, drop your salams. Let us know that you're here. And don't forget to share the podcast. But assalamu alaikum, everybody. Wa alaikum salam, Saudia. Thank you for chiming right on. So, alaikum salam, Anisa. Welcome. Remember to share the show. Welcome, you guys. We have launched a new mini series called A Rose is Still a Rose. And we're ending season 5. But this series is really something that is crafted just from a place of a desire to call us back to, first of all, our relationship with Allah. Allah always calls us back to ourselves and being able to have a good relationship with ourselves, a loving relationships with ourselves. But sometimes we have to talk through some of the barriers or some of the things that interfere with that relationship. And so we're going to talk about it today, which is surviving infidelity. And I'm super excited. Walaikum salam, everybody, as you guys know, because we have the world-renowned, the famous, super busy, moving and shaking and changing the world, that clay couple here with us today, inshallah. I would like to welcome them officially to the show. I'm going to introduce them, but I just wanted to officially say thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And it's really special you guys being here because we can talk about this conversation, surviving infidelity, from a variety of different lenses. But I would say that you're probably one of the primary couples that has a really grasp on what the Muslim community specifically, what our community is navigating. And I think it's just nice to have that raw, open discussion and to talk about where we are and some of the, possible solutions, remedies, and resources that are out there for us that are navigating it. And this isn't an easy conversation to talk about as Muslims. So I just really appreciate you guys being here. All right, so that clay couple, most of you guys know who they are. They're also known as the, is it Ozzy and Ruby D counseling? And so they deal with, everything under the sun, whether it's love, sex, infidelity, any other issues related to your mental health, your well-being. They are the ones that you are going to call first and foremost. They deal with everyone, but everyone in the Muslim community at least knows when you say, who can we go to when we're having issues in our marriage, when we have issues with ourselves, the first name that often comes up is that clay couple. Mashallah, they're a dynamic duo. Sister Naila, she's been on the show a couple of times. I know she has a master's degree in counseling, and she runs a practice alongside her husband, Coach Hassan Clay, and they are phenomenal and dynamic together. They have done all kinds of workshops and retreats and just the work to really keep marriages together. And they, mashallah, have a success rate of a divorce rate less than 2%. Am I understanding that correctly? Mashallah. So I've personally, like I said, been at both of their doorsteps. I've benefited immensely personally as well as professionally. So I'm just super excited to have this conversation.
Alhamdulillah.
I wanted to just also mention that we had another therapist, Sister Anam. I just heard back from her, and she does have a logistical issue. She may join us later on at the show, which is absolutely okay, but she is on the West Coast, and she is a therapist. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's navigating a situation right now, but hopefully she will join us, inshallah. So, but thank you guys for being here. I wanted to get right into it. I do want to just say this, you guys. Sister Malika said, may Allah Ta'ala reward you guys tremendously. Ameen. So we want to say ameen to that. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
I wanted to just start right off with this conversation. Why do people cheat in relationships?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa nabi Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa ajma'in. Why do people cheat? We came up with that one. I think we hit the $64 million jackpot, right? Because there's various reasons. There's varying reasons why people cheat.
I think part of it is the first thing that we think about is when someone who has been unfaithful, we start labeling them negatively.
Mm.
And then, of course, it is a negative, situation. But, happy couples do experience infidelity. And so I think the first thing that
Or betrayal.
right, because that's what we call it, betrayal. Because that's
Okay.
literally what happens, a betrayal in the marriage. Because there are so many different types of um, of infidelity. But
Okay.
infidelity doesn't always mean that there has been some known marital dysfunction. It really comes from someone's insecure attachment, um, from repeatedly having the same arguments that never get addressed, and so you start to look for ways to resolve and reduce and to
Mm.
reduce that weight. Someone who very often now prolong lack of sex may do it. That's not one of the most common, because people
Mhm.
think that infidelity is about sex.
About sex,
It's
right?
not. There are plenty of people who have been unfaithful who never had a physical or sexual encounter with someone. And so there are so many things that lead to it, but we have this thought, well, you do it because you're selfish, because you don't care, because you didn't love the person. And that's sometimes really not true. We're talking about someone who longs for something in their life and they look to fulfill it in some capacity. Definitely not the best one, but that really comes out to be the ultimate goal.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So I know you guys work a lot with the Muslim community. So I'm only going to ask you this question under the frame of your work. So I don't expect you to speak holistically, but just what you see. So when I was looking at the statistics, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if my statistics are off, but it says about 30 to 60% generally of married couples cheat or engage in, I'm just going to say, an extramarital affair, just specific, that type of betrayal. In the line of work that you're doing, are these statistics, do you find these statistics to be true? And do you also find that to be in alignment with what you're seeing in our community, Muslim community?
I mean,
We-
I think you have to look at that on a broader or a wider scale, because
Okay.
people think of infidelity as the cheating aspect of sexual encounters,
Mm.
where there are various.
Because she said extramarital specifically, which would mean something sexual.
Well, and I don't. I would believe that extramarital, even in extramarital, you still have a variety of infidelity situations.
Okay.
So would that be
That's true.
would that be something that would be? I would probably say it might be even a little higher.
If you include
And
everything, we're talking about infidelity in this context. We're
Right.
talking
Okay.
about sexting. We're
Right.
talking about social infidelity,
Financial
financial
infidelity. Right.
infidelity,
Emotional infidelity.
right. People have work husbands and work spouses. That's a real thing. That's
Right.
just not, oh, he brought me a coffee in the morning. This is I worked with someone um a while back who was having a complete affair with her supervisor at work. And who knew? They engaged in their activities at work, and then she went home. Both of them went home to their respective families. And so all of these things, these are real things. And so if we're talking about the Muslim community, do we see it? Yes, we do see it. Is that the issue that we see most often? No.
No. Okay.
But that's not the issue that we see most often anyway. Now, do
Right.
we see greater concentrations of it than maybe some others do? Yes, but that's because we do classes on infidelity, because we talk about
About it.
infidelity. We even offer the alternative that you don't have to divorce behind infidelity,
Right.
which, woo, that's taboo. So because we sit on various platforms that may be
Mhm.
controversial, they may, for some people, they're also more comfortable.
Hmm.
Okay.
We might
So
see more of it.
I got it. That makes a lot of sense. And I know you guys just got finished with a 6-week course called Steps for Overcoming Betrayal, right? Okay. So let's define it so that we're clear. So, okay, because infidelity, a lot, you're right. People define it different ways, they're different categories. So when we
So
talk, is
is
it an
that is
echo?
it? No, it just stopped for a moment.
Okay, but you can
Okay.
hear me.
Uh-huh.
Okay, perfect. So could you define the most common types of infidelity in a marriage?
I know what I'm gonna say.
So go on and say it.
Emotional.
Hmm.
Can you define that? What does that look like?
Emotional. An emotional affair may be the work husband, the work spouse. It may be going to your high school reunion and, rekindling something. Then it's just harmless talking. This person may even become a friend of your marriage. My spouse gets to talk with them too, but it doesn't mean that the two of you are not, conversing at times where your spouse would not approve, where this person has access to parts of you mentally, maybe even spiritually, that you don't share with your spouse. These things are emotional affairs, and if you want to sum it up, we're talking about interactions that are beyond the physical, where your spouse would not be cool with.
Mm, okay. All right.
Because, and I think what the distinction I'm making is, you don't get to define infidelity for your marriage. Those are agreed upon terms, and the two of you may not have the same idea, which is very often
Often the
the
case.
conflict.
Right. Hmm.
Which is
Right.
very often the conflict. I don't care if you talk to that guy at work or if he calls you at 9 o'clock at night. Well, I, on the other hand, may have a problem if your female supervisor is calling you at 9 o'clock at night. Because,
Mm,
see, my male coworkers, they're not calling me. And so for you to say you don't care, okay, I get it. That's a phenomenon that will likely not happen. But you cool with her calling you, and she is. It's
mm,
not okay. This is where we see the issues,
mhm,
because then it looks like you are more protective of this emotional relationship than you are of our union.
wow. Okay. All right. So what are other forms? So you said emotional is the most common.
Financial,
Financial. Hmm.
secret bank accounts, getting inheritances, and you don't tell your
The spouse
spouse
about it.
about it,
You know,
being in
those
debt.
just in case accounts that you have.
Mm,
You
Those,
talk about me.
that JIC account. You know,
It's jig. Jig means just
just in
in
case.
case.
Right.
Just in case something pop off.
Well,
so do you feel that that's infidelity for someone to have?
because what happens is it's an act of betrayal, because again, here's someone storing money away based upon the fact that if I got the dip and
I
I got my
can.
nest egg to dip with,
Right. So it
right?
looks
Listen,
like an
right,
evacuation plan.
exactly.
Now, the difference between us is that you know about my
Right.
account.
Well, I mean, but at that point, it's not about,
Right.
I
Mhm.
just know you have an account, right? And I know you add to that account. You know,
So
but
the betrayal comes in obviously with the secrecy. The
but the
secrecy, the
With,
secret,
lie.
right?
or I'm in debt and I don't tell you until we're about to lose the house. Or I pretended like I'm going to work every day, and then you learn that I didn't pay the rent.
And so the secrecy is not so much as the secrecy, but it is the deception. I got
Right.
to lean in one way when I'm actually going another direction.
I mean, I think another example, because this is something that we're working with with the client right now. So we've been working with 8 months
Mm.
now, and the event that brought them to counseling, we have found out that that event that brought them to is actually an issue of betrayal.
Mhm.
Right.
That the spouse, so we call it the offending spouse lied about that. And so
Mm.
now it's not only did we come to counseling under what we thought, what I believe was going to be us negotiating how to work
Work
out
out
an
the
event.
event. Right.
Then I find out you lied
Right.
about the event. This is a great example of even in your own marriage. This is emotional abuse. And so
Mhm.
the other spouse was saying, the victimized spouse is saying it is the betrayal. I mean, not the betrayal, the deceit,
Yep.
the lengths that you went through for 2 years
Mhm.
to keep this going, to cause me to believe something else in
Right.
error. So it is what drives the sting in betrayal is so much effort put towards the being deceitful.
Right. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. I had this conversation before on the podcast a few times,
Mhm.
and we were having a conversation like men and women about privacy versus secrecy. It can be a little gray. And then when does it cross the line of it being deceptive? Is there a way to really be able to draw the line between privacy and secrecy?
You can, um, you can, and I'm thinking in regard to clients.
Yeah.
You can, but that's where even if we disagree on what that is that we have to make a compromise if we want to stay
Or
married.
negotiated
Right.
this
Yeah.
situation.
Right. We have to make a negotiation about how we are going to function in our marriage. Now, we have seen couples get whole divorces
Hmm.
over this one issue because it was something greater than the telephone. You know, they had disagreements of what private how to be transparent,
Mhm.
how they
Right.
were going to define
Transparency.
transparency in the marriage, and they simply could not agree. And I will say, and Hassan knows better than I do because he had conversations with the husband, but that husband, he deeply regretted
Mhm.
this because she really was a great wife in so many aspects. But this one issue, they got hung up on.
Mm.
It
Mm.
if you're not doing anything, why can't here?
Well,
Yeah.
why
Why can't
can't I
I
just
just
take your phone?
Why can't I just take your phone?
Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. I could see why it does cause that. I mean, personally, I think, even just the feeling of being deceived, it hurts so bad. Especially, I feel like, I mean, I don't know if it goes this way on the brother side, but as a woman, it's like intuitively, So like your nervous system is going through hell and havoc. You're asking questions, and it's like, they're going to greater and greater lengths to deceive you. And sometimes it's really difficult to get over like even just the torment of like knowing that they
How
literally
long
want
you play, knowing how long you were played by
how
someone
long you were
you
played.
love and trusted. Yes.
Yeah, and how do you build from that? All right, so I wanted to ask a deeper layer question, and I know that there's a variety of reasons why people cheat, but there are reasons related to the way people feel about themselves that cause
Yeah.
them to seek something additional or constantly be seeking, because some people are always seeking. Um, as it relates to just the individual relationship with yourself, first of all, for the cheater, okay, what wounds are you typically seeing people generally navigate, especially those that you see are repeated offenders?
Okay, so in regard to the person who did the offense,
Absolutely.
the first
First.
one is guilt. They
Mm.
actually do feel great guilt. And that's even when we teach the course, that's something that we go over is
Okay.
that, yeah, you actually do feel bad. Sometimes good people do stuff
Wrong.
that
They
they
just do
do.
wrong stuff.
They do wrong stuff.
They make
Even
bad decisions.
Even if we look at the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum,
Yeah.
they were the best. And still, if you studied them, you can see sometimes. I remember, I don't even remember what it was. I had read something and I went to Hassan. I'm like, is that true? He's like, yeah. And so humans show up flawed, and the degree to which that happens, varies. But people actually do feel poorly about what they did.
Right.
They actually feel pain by seeing someone I care about be hurt and knowing that I caused it.
Right.
And that's it, that whole concept is hard to believe. But it's true. How many of us have done something that, you deeply regret?
So when people constantly do it again and again and again, typically, what do you see that they're navigating? Is it that they can't get past the guilt and they just do it again, or what?
Yeah,
Like,
but people who do it again and again and again, usually, because we've seen this, they quit coming to counseling.
Well, and people, yeah, because people who do it again and again and again, they're not
Trying.
They're not trying.
And the infidelity is just one of many of the different things that they are doing,
Right.
that is
Mm.
unfaithful and abusive.
Right.
That's not isolated to this particular area.
Exactly.
But we never have worked with them long term. And when we're talking long term, for us, that's anywhere from 6 months to a year.
I mean,
they don't last.
is it because they're navigating they're navigating some really deep wounds that they're just not able to come to terms
They
with?
are.
But
They may be.
Well, I mean, maybe they just have whorish mentalities. Okay. I mean, I'm gonna keep that 100. All right.
Okay, because this is not the way to resolve whatever those issues
might be. Right. They just may have a mentality that, they can't resist their desires. They have a lack of control of desires or whatever, or they just feel like they want to sleep with anything or deal with anything that they want to deal with.
Or we had that issue where he himself had experienced sexual trauma. And that is when the last 2 cases, we referred both of them to individual counseling while we worked with them as a couple. And the one who continued the individual counseling, he ended up with the greatest of success. Now the other one, they just dropped out. What happened is, he says that, well, I'm just going to do my individual counseling. I don't want to do the couples counseling. The wife agrees, then he drops out of the individual counseling too, because he don't plan to do anything any differently. But they had many other issues.
Yeah. So, okay, I have a question for you guys that we're going to just bring in for a minute. Can someone push someone to cheat?
You always control your own individual behavior.
Right.
Because you cheat,
you get to make it. Now, I mean, can a person get on your nerves, annoy you, or can y'all have problems or anything along those lines there? Sure, that happens. But you decide if you're going to sleep with that man or sleep with that woman. Right? That's a you decision. That's not a you made me do it decision.
Got it. All right, I asked the question.
And that's really, when someone says that, that's really a person having a lack of accountability.
Right.
They really are trying to. I mean, they probably gaslighting somebody at that point.
Absolutely. No, do you often see in the Muslim community, because sometimes what comes up, and I'm sure is not as common as we think, it just depends on kind of what, like you said, what we tend to kind of receive or take in. But as it relates to, I guess the term is spiritual abuse, but more so using things within the deen to justify certain behaviors that are harmful or abusive to other people. Does that become a common theme? Because I have heard when cases where people are caught or cornered, then it's like, oh, you're not obedient. Is that a common thing or not so much as it relates to Muslims in particular?
Again, that's a matter of not taking accountability.
Does it
Okay.
happen?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Because but this is the other thing is that someone who like we had said previously, who commits infidelity, there are probably some other things that are going on. So spiritual abuse would likely not surprise me.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. All right. SubhanAllah. I appreciate that. I wanted to talk a little bit about, um, you know, the one who is cheated on, maybe the victim, or um, when it comes to that pain and just sort of navigating that first realization, what are some of the initial things that you would recommend someone who just came to an awareness that this has happened to sort of ground themselves with? Because a lot of people just sometimes we kind of lose it.
Yes, we've seen that. Uh, to be mindful that this is a loss, that one of the first stages that you go through is grief. Depending on who you ask, there are 5 to 7 stages of grief. So you may be shocked, you might be in denial, you may be angry.
Maybe sad.
Yeah, but so in regard to the will, you may be trying to, bargain with the person to get changed behavior. If you do this, I'll do this if you just don't cheat on me again. All of these things can happen then because these are the natural responses to grief. You just took a L, a really hard one. The relationship you thought that you had, it doesn't exist. And that's sad.
Right. Right. We're not going to go off and burn his stuff though, right? We're not doing that, Nyla.
Because this is not and one of the things that we tell people when people say, what do I do? Nothing. This is not the mindset for decision making.
Right.
Chill.
Right, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I've seen a lot of couples who survive, as you say, surviving infidelity. They have survived the betrayal, and one of the things is when people go and get their family involved and doing this and telling this and doing that, but then next thing you know, the man stays with the woman or the woman stays with the man who has been betrayed, right? And they stay together. Then you have a whole plethora of different things going on at that time when those people are still together because they decided to work it out. Whatever way they decided to work it out. Right. So one of the things I definitely caution people is when you find out something, before blasting it from the rooftops, you know, obviously you're going to drill the person that you just found out about. That's going to happen. But kind of keep that in house and go ahead and get you some help if that's what you feel like you want to do.
Okay. Because in other words, you don't know how it's going to end up. So you can make a whole mess.
Right. And then you got to recover from the mess that's just been made and the infidelity.
Right. Right. Like layering the trauma. Yeah. So okay, so we're like in a boundaries age, which is really important. So is it this concept that if you have strong boundaries and you like clear, you kind of come in a relationship and you're setting certain standards and expectations, does that put a person in a better position to not be cheated on, or that really doesn't matter?
The first problem with that is that would mean that what you does dictates what another person does. Always a fallacy. And so that would definitely be weak logic for that. Uh, no, there is nothing that you can do to prevent being cheated on. Now, most people do, unless you have, a non-traditional relationship. There are limits. Even people who are in polygynous relationships, they have limits on what and boundaries on what infidelity and fidelity looks like. I'm expecting you to be with the three of us as your wives and no one else. Anything else would be considered infidelity. But I lost my thought just that quick.
Well, I mean,
You're
I
talking
have
about the boundaries that you could have to
Oh,
limit.
but what people believe is that generally speaking, we do have that boundary of don't cheat on me.
Right.
Well, when someone crosses it, it
Okay.
still is going to be about what it is that you you are going to do in response to that. You can have the boundary, and when they cross it, with one common mistake is this: people believe that if I have this boundary, and then I agree that we're going to recover from the boundary, that I have somehow indirectly taught you that it is okay for you to cheat on me.
Mhm.
And there are two things going on here. Accepting the reality of what happened never means that you approve
proof of it.
of what happened. And so you can have a boundary, and if you make the decision that you don't want to risk the marriage, you don't have to. You just have to renegotiate what
Mm.
this is going to look like, because you know what? You broke a deal. I'm not looking at you the same. We cannot operate by the same set of rules.
Right.
They don't matter no more. We need some new ones at this point. So even infidelity, when those boundaries are broken, getting new ones. And the process for that can be painstaking.
Hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about the stages to survive infidelity. I know you said it starts with accepting, grieving, all of that, and you just talked about renegotiating. So, if a person does choose, like you said, to not risk the marriage, what are some realities that they need to come to as it relates to even navigating that survival?
One, you are never going to get all of the answers in regard to the offense. And because people try to create this timeline, they try to identify the moments where they got, and filling in gaps. Sometimes you can, because Shaitan is busy. We see people making up stuff that it isn't even there. I knew it. He came home from work 10 minutes late for the past 2 days. Well, maybe he stopped for gas.
Right. Maybe the light. He caught every light. You know what I mean? Or she caught every light.
Right. And so people start putting together this
Right.
narrative that has some facts and has some assumptions.
Right. They start connecting dots that don't
exist.
connect.
Hmm.
So that is the first thing, and that may be ongoing. You may be standing there at the stove cooking mashed potatoes 7 years later and think, something just come to you. And that's a part of the process, because what hurt you.
Right.
And it still hurts. Y'all may have overcome, but that situation, it still hurts. So knowing that those inquiries are going to come, but at some point you have to stop being Sherlock Holmes. Just before we came on, we were working with a couple today who is going through a type of betrayal. And I don't know, I said, I had stepped away before we got on because I was talking, to her. And she was saying how much she mistrusts him and really how angry she is about it. And she was saying, she was picking out incidents. And I said to her daughter, do you need any more proof that you don't trust him? She said, well, I guess not. We know you don't trust him. He knows you don't trust him.
Yeah, he don't trust you. So
Why are we still looking for more and more and more proof? At some point, we have to stop that. And you need to see what your next step is going to be. Where is that? Because this one is not serving.
Right. And then you want a situation to come quickly, and it's not going to do that because you still in this Sherlock Holmes mode, when really you need to be out of that one too, because there's never going to be an answer that's going to be good enough for why that person did what they did.
Because they do what we call jade.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of her problem, is that she believes he is, I'm gonna make up this word, he is jading.
Mhm.
He is jading her, which means he's not taking responsibility.
Mhm.
Justify, argue, defend, explain. So people tend to do one or
All
all
four
of
these
those things.
Mhm.
And even today, we told the husband, just be quiet.
Just be quiet.
Because nothing you say is going to give her the idea that you were empathetic and remorseful.
Right.
Just stop.
Right.
Because he was still at that first one. He was at that justifying
And defending.
and defending
And explaining.
and explaining.
And sometimes when he explained, it sounded like a defense.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we have to go through how do we get past this? There are some specific behaviors, you know, that you can do to respond, not to prevent the person from jading, but so you can keep yourself calm in the event that it happens.
It happens, right.
You know, at some point, immediately, you know, this is going to be about you protecting yourself emotionally and mentally and spiritually as well. And so we always think, well, I don't want to ignite the conversation. This is not about, well, igniting the conversation is about you keeping yourself safe in the conversations.
Right. Absolutely. I saw also where it said about 69% of couples who've experienced marital infidelity break up. They decide to not reconcile or heal and move on. And that's a decision I'm assuming that everybody has a right to come to. And for people that have came to that point and decided that they cannot continue the relationship, you know, there are a lot of layers as it relates to that healing. Some people find it very difficult, especially on the outside of the relationship, to heal that, or even just to like trust again. What are some suggestions, even outside of therapy, that a person should be sort of reinforcing with themselves as they are attempting to heal outside of the relationship from infidelity?
Outside of the relationship is the first thing she said. Beyond outside of therapy, that's the first thing that I think of. What were you going to say?
No, I was trying to really just process the question.
Yeah. So if you choose not to stay.
Mhm.
If you're saying, if you choose not to stay, what are some resources that you can use?
So outside of therapy, how should a person be treating themselves that's attempting to heal? Yeah.
The first thing I would say is to grieve the loss of it. The second thing, and particularly women don't do this because of the stigmas and the things that are attached to leaving a marriage. Because you were told, you know, oh, you can get over some little infidelity. You can get over that. But making sure you have a support circle, because many women go through infidelity. I mean, it go through, infidelity and even the divorce following it alone. And they tell people afterwards, and they believe that that's the thing to do, to keep it quiet, you know, to protect my family, you know, so the children won't be embarrassed. They have all, you know, kinds of reasons for it, but the opposite would be recommended.
Okay.
And I think it's, you know, it's a little bit different for a man though.
Okay.
All
How
right.
so?
Because you think women go through a situation alone, a man definitely going to go through infidelity alone, because his ego will not allow for him to say that his woman has been touched by another man.
So
You
he's
know,
more
and
likely to be quiet.
He's more likely to be quiet, and he was probably going to be more likely to have a lot more difficulties even in the intimacy aspect of it with her, because his view is going to be somebody else has been with her.
Mm.
And
And
I get what you're saying, because we worked with a couple where he had a long-term affair,
Right.
and then she struggled with recovering and healing greatly. But when her restoration came through, sis was she had checked out. And she, while they were married,
she had an affair.
She had an affair, and he was not very forgiving
And
at all.
And put it on video.
okay.
And so he saw the video, which
Well,
then,
that's
oh God,
that's right.
know, he couldn't get beyond the fact that he is looking at another man having sex with his wife.
Even though
he'd been slaying another woman for the last 10 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
So men respond to
infidelity a lot different than women do. And
so let's talk about the difference again. So you're saying that men deal with it in isolation, or tell me the difference.
Even
more isolated than a woman would.
Because we might be inclined to say something to someone, you know, because it's particularly if children are involved, because you got to tell the kids, and guess what? The children will tell. The children will tell that mom and dad are split. So you'll probably tell someone. But men won't tell anyone. They may leave the union, but they're not telling anyone why.
And you said they're less forgiven than the women, right? We know that, like, they're less forgiven than the women. Mm-hmm. Mm.
See, even someone said an actual visual is way more painful.
Mm-hmm.
I can. That's why I said that one's definitely that one. And yeah, that one's definitely. She paid him back big time. Is that often why women cheat? Is revenge? Do you see that? Revenge cheating, is that more common amongst women?
I don't know about revenge cheating. I just know that something precipitated it. Mm-hmm.
For a woman to cheat, is that what you're saying?
It's not because he did, but something,
something came before. Some preceded that triggered her to be able to do whatever it is, and maybe she just liked the dude that she was trying to have an affair with.
But isn't usually more of an emotional reason? I mean, and then men, they just, they also are kind of driven by the physical.
Right. I mean, because in some instances for a man, well, okay, me and Naila might differ on this a little bit. So
that's okay.
You're two opposing views, maybe. But, because I don't necessarily think a woman isn't driven by something physical.
Okay.
Right. But I know a man is.
Okay. Because a man is more likely to have repetitive one-night stands.
Right.
And that be totally physical. And so a woman, she's more likely to look at the risk factors for her, and it will be more of an emotional connection because she has decided that it's worth that risk. Then have a bit more shallow
approach to it. Right. I just see it. She get to me. Okay, I get it. And so some men work from that mindset. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Not as if he's in love with her or so enamored with her that he just got to be in her presence. It can really just be purely physical.
Right. They may do it more just for illicit sex.
Got it. Sister Sophia says society condones these double standards and women die so many times inside because of these double standards. Do you agree that it's a lot of double standards as it relates to how we respond? I mean,
yeah.
Double standards everywhere, though.
And see, I was just getting ready to complain about him and his response, because there are times where we're having a discussion and I'll point out the double standards between the gender. He will agree, and then I'm gonna say what you say in private. I don't make the house rules.
I just play the game. I just understand the game. I don't make the rules. I understand the game, and that's how it works.
Mm. Okay. I see what you. I see.
Which angers me.
Right?
Right.
That's why I said we might disagree on something. Y'all might hear us disagreeing.
And I understand that the reality of it, because we do have to work in these spaces, and someone is saying, there are these double standards and they can be frustrating, but these are the realities that we live in, because the belief about women being accessible for sex under any circumstance is thousands of years old.
That part.
And
Absolutely.
so if there is always that underlying current of a woman being available. Now, how I access her might be it is under different circumstances that has layers to it. However, women have been seen in this regard. So yes, you're going to eventually come up with different, sets of house rules.
Right. And also, like I said, there's a little bit of like almost expectation, it seems, culturally, as it relates to, I was listening to this clip. It was online. It might have been TikTok or something, but it was like two Black men just talking about how they were raised. Like, it was like a good man was a man that took care of his main woman and his side chick. You know what I mean? Like, that was the way there was some conditioning.
I'm going to tell Hassan's story, because
Okay.
only I can tell it the way I tell it.
Okay.
So this is when he's somewhere between 18 and 20 something. I hope that's the age range. So he's in his hometown here in Georgia, and he goes to see the young lady. And then when he goes in to see the young lady, he and her father, they recognize each other. And it's not because of some family tie or work relationship. He recognizes her because he knows the woman that he kicking it with on the other side of town. And this is a whole married man.
So what's up with that, Brother Hassan?
Did I tell the story correctly?
But you got it close. You close.
What part I leave out? Tell it.
No, it's good. But I'm thinking of even one thing. As a man, right? And I would say, Naila can't stand when I say this, right? But I grew up with the understanding from my dad, my stepdad, my uncles and cousins, that every man need more than one.
Okay.
Right. And so, I mean, my dad would say even the ugly dude deserve two. Right. And so the fact that now taking how you take care of them, how you do this, how you do that. Now, that was understood that, he married, but he got his woman on this other side of town over here, or she lives around the corner, or whatever she may be, right? But I'm not saying
it was right.
It was right, with this understanding today. But I do know that that's a functionality for men.
That's a cultural exposure.
That's what I'm saying. Is it cultural? Because Black,
but now
it's a cultural
but
exposure.
Now, we don't expect our women to have more than one.
Because again,
because it is a double standard. If I got two, those two belong to me.
And there's an understanding that those two belong to him.
Right. And if you are messing with somebody else, you got a problem.
Well, see, and this is where the codes of infidelity between men and women differ. Because the wives will definitely have a problem with everything that he understood. But we have an entire group of husbands over here who collectively define infidelity differently. And they teach this to their sons.
Okay. So now I gotta push it a little further. Brother Hassan might, you might have to check me. I don't know. I'm just gonna ask the question. Don't shoot the messenger. Okay. So honestly, because I was on another show and with another guest, and he was actually speaking of exactly what you spoke of. And he said that it's as a result of that, why African American Muslim men in particular are, now we know polygyny is allowable. I love it. I think it's beautiful for the community. I just always have to give that disclaimer. But why African American Muslim men are like driven to do it, and sometimes it is done in a way, not all the time, but sometimes it is done in a way that mirrors main chick, side chick. I'm just saying what was said. I wanted to ask you about that.
We would totally agree with that. And the same phenomenon happens on the other side, where you have the wives who would definitely have one definition of infidelity. You have Muslim women who are agreeing and consenting to the side chick definition and criteria. It hasn't stopped.
So that is a result of our social cultural conditioning. I don't got nothing to do with I'm not trying to follow the Dean and the Sunnah necessarily.
I don't believe it to be.
You have to have some type of mindset,
right?
To
feed into it.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are guidelines and conditions. Now, I'm not saying every man is like that, right?
Right.
But and I realize that a lot of women have to be in a position of protecting themselves from that, right? As far as polygyny is concerned, the side chick thing, right? So that's understandable, right? But yeah, it's because we have been conditioned. I think men and women have been conditioned to understand, well, this is monogamy, and anything else is the other woman, right? So there is this functionality that's going on that's not really good, but conditioning. We got years of conditioning in that.
Oh, and I think what I'm about to say connects to what it is that you're saying, and that is the same pattern that a man uses for a woman outside of marriage. It's the side chick. The pathway to side chick doesn't change. It's the same game. It's the same language. It's the same type of guy. And so if it works in a situation where I'm out here in the dunya, that same behavior, it works in the deen too. Now, this is where the problem comes from. Because we allow it, those of us in the deen, we allow it to have a meaningful impact. I don't even know how to say it.
Right.
We allow it to happen.
Because what can take place is there is a difference. Now, I will say there is a difference in between, it looks the same. Like you say, 1 + 1 is going to be 2, right? It looks the same. But if you are under the mindset, this is how I'm working it, and you do it the way it's supposed to work, then the benefit are supposed to be better outcomes.
Okay.
Right. Versus the hidden aspect of things, and not the taking care of things or whatever. It's a hidden aspect that really takes place in the dunya that doesn't supposed to take place in Islam. And so if then a person is saying, okay, I'm a polygynous man, I'm gonna have more than one woman, and he let this be understood from the beginning,
right?
This is who he is, and this is where he works, and this is how he moves. Then that's a total difference. Then, okay, yeah, I'm, me and you together, but I'm hollering at old Fatima over here, right?
Okay.
And you don't know nothing, and you won't know nothing about it, right? Even if I decide to secretly marry her,
that's still infidelity.
At that point, that's still infidelity.
Yeah, that's the thing where people may not be defining it as such,
right?
But
and I mean, because at some point, everything has to come to light, right? If this is how you're going to move, everything has. I mean, you may do things trying to get it together, because there is a period that everything is not just going to be on the table. You don't know how you going or how she's going or whatever, but at some point, it has to hit the table. And what happens in instances where in the dunya and in Islam, when people do it this way, when it doesn't hit the table, that's when it's side chick time.
That's when it's side chick time?
Right. That's when the woman is being side chick, and that's when the infidelity is taking place.
When it doesn't come to the light.
When it doesn't come to the light. Because at some point it's going to have to come to the light, or you're going to have to leave it alone.
Right. Right.
So you're saying until it's revealed, if they're secretly married?
No. There is
Okay.
no secret marriage.
Okay, so you're saying until it's revealed, it's not a side chick situation?
Because it might be a situation where they're getting to know each other or whatever the case may be, right?
Okay, so you're saying it would be that's a different type of infidelity.
Well, in some instances, people will call it a courtship. You see,
Well, that leads into my next thing, because I think that we should clarify this a little bit.
Mhm.
Like this whole thing of like, oh no, I wasn't cheating. I was courting.
Getting to know the sister.
I was getting to know the sister because I may someday get a
Marry
second, and then you'll be like courting 20 people.
But then that's the problem. If you saying, okay, now I'm courting 20 people. Now, I know that's an exaggerated number, right?
But you should all be transparent, right?
But let's say if you even courting 2.
If it's not done with transparency. And see, people believe that because I have the privilege of having more than one, I can access this additional marriage the same way I did the first one. No, you can't.
You can't. I know.
You cannot court the same way as a married man when you are in pursuit of another wife. There is a difference. The circumstances, the conditions have changed. Matter of fact, the name of the marriage has, if you marry, even the name of that has changed. This needs to be known, and not just known that you're pursuing, but even have some criteria, such as one of the common ones is, when should he tell me about her? Some want to know as soon as you think she cute, tell me about her. And someone else may say, I don't want to know nothing until you know you're going to marry her. These are conversations to have.
Agreements. Yep.
And people don't want to have these conversations. She's just trying to control me. She probably is. Right. She probably is. And so, but this is where you have the conversation and you take what looks like control into reassurances. And then you remove this, the pathway to infidelity. Because the first thought is a mental one. I think you're doing something. We define what that is, later. But I feel like you're doing something.
Right. So I knew this would come up. So a man doesn't have to tell his wife about his second wife.
We would disagree.
I would disagree with that.
Marriages are not.
Well, I think that gets convoluted. So let me actually put that in a better perspective. He doesn't have to have permission.
Okay, they just typed that. So, and that's what I'm saying. We're not saying that he has to get permission to marry,
right?
But after the marriage takes place,
or even before,
right. She should know that this is what's happening. That this other person exists,
right?
And that's when the infidelity.
Right.
That's when the infidelity happens.
Because you said he doesn't have to tell his wife about the second wife, which you're saying you disagree with that.
Yeah. Right. She should know.
Yeah. I mean,
like physically, isn't that a concern?
Because his time is, because see, here's the thing. His time is going to be used. Right. And he can't, I mean, unless he's a truck driver or something, he always got this absence, whatever.
Truck drivers alone.
Right. But I'm just saying, But
even with that, there has to be some.
There still has to be some standards.
Right.
And so if he's sitting there saying, okay, look, I'm gonna be gone. Don't worry about where I'm at.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Right. This is where it becomes where the issue is not the infidelity.
Right.
You're talking about spiritual abuse at this point.
Right.
Because you have gotten us into this spiritual arrangement, but then you decide that you're not going to follow the spiritual guidelines of it. But you pull me into it, regardless of, let's say I don't know. You pull her into it, and then she is unknowingly participating in your wrongdoing.
I don't know if that's spiritual. I don't know if that's about spiritual abuse. I think it's more about he's just raggedy as hell.
Okay,
but you are using the dean. You are using the dean to justify your raggediness.
No, you're not using the dean. You're not using a dean because there's
Okay.
nothing in a dean that
would
just
justify.
that,
Mm.
right? So
Mhm.
you have to. That's what a person then doesn't know their dean.
Either one, either both of
Either
them,
both of them,
or one
one
of
of
them.
them. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So I think what happens is a person would be able to say, "Hey, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing." I mean, what's going on between your wife and you, the conversation that's going on. I don't necessarily have to divulge that information to whoever I'm talking to because right now this is about where we at.
Right.
Right now, if I'm pulling her in, then at that point, once I pull her in, then everything has to be
Change.
changed.
The conditions
The condition of
of
things change.
changes. And
Right.
if he is not following that, then no, he is not following Dean. And see, and this is how there is no way you can have a secret wife and be right.
And be right.
Because how are you
Mm.
even being fair?
Mm.
There's just no way it's going to happen because only way you could give the illusion of fairness is lie.
Yes.
Now we're
Lies
talking
and deception.
about more,
Now we're talking about deception. Now we're talking about more betrayal.
right? And this is what
And we ain't even talking about infidelity.
Yeah.
We're not just saying infidelity. We're talking about the aspect of betrayal, what we actually started talking about in the beginning.
Right.
Why it just keeps doing the same thing. You have to keep being deceptive and keep being deceptive. Why do that?
It's cowardly. You would say it's cowardly, right? Very cowardly.
He would.
As a,
Because he would say, any man that won't tell him, why you scared of your wife? If you scared of your wife, you need to leave polygyny alone. Is that not a direct Hassan
That's
quote?
our quote. That's our quote.
right.
My wife know. I mean, my wife would know. I'm going to get me another wife, right? And it's understood because I'm polygynous. Now, how we have that conversation between us is going to be between us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to get at to everybody else because it ain't everybody else's business.
Right.
We have to make sure because the contract right now is me and her.
Mm. Absolutely.
So I have to have that conversation with her, and she has to have that conversation with me, what these expectations would look like between us.
And that's not secrecy.
And exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you guys saying what needs to be said. Even I know someone's still saying it's not true, but alhamdulillah, we expect that.
Don't worry about it, Hassan.
Okay.
That you don't have to tell about a secret wife. I mean, there's nothing in the Quran and Sunnah to support that. And
I mean, because all the messenger wives all knew that he was married to somebody. He had nobody in secret.
And
right.
isn't lying haram? I thought every lie is. I don't know.
Right. That's what exactly.
And the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he who deceives us is not from us.
Absolutely.
So goes back again. There is nothing in Islam to support that type of.
So there's a mindset of why you keeping something secret.
Yep.
There is something there that obviously there's something there that you want hidden. I mean, for
what reason? For what reason?
How does that hiding benefit you or the marriage? It might benefit you, but how does it benefit the marriage?
And you have to determine what looks like hiding. And again, I want to make sure that I'm clear what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is that the contract at this point is between a man and his wife. Now, once he bring or get ready to bring another person in, it would behoove him to let it be known this is how now I'm getting ready to split my time up because I have another wife or I'm taking another wife.
Right.
My life is about to change.
Because her life is about to change.
My life is about to change. And this is how these changes are going to impact our marriage and or our family. Because that's the correct way. And so if you don't have these conversations or do it justly, then you're lying. You're lying about where you are. You're lying about
You're lying about whatever. You know what I mean?
People lie about kids. They have whole children. her whole secret family. And you even lying about that until the child support order comes to the house.
Right. And you're also denying people the rights to know their own kin. Like if you have kids on this side and that side, so many violations
Well,
there.
and here's there too. This is even why the walima is so important
Hmm.
times, and
Yeah.
and the witnesses to marriages, right? Because marriages need to be public.
Right.
There's nothing in Islam that says marriages are not public. They are supposed to be known publicly. This is even why two witnesses are needed.
Right.
So if I'm walking down the street with with a woman and dang, what Brother Hassan doing with this woman? We holding hands and nobody know that this is my wife. What
Yep.
is that? Because I didn't sit down and I done got caught up somewhere, right? But if you are public and say, hey, no, this is my wife, who, and even if it's a question about it, well, we got married at such and such, brother such and such there, brother such and such was there, whoever, right?
Right.
Islam is about proofs and evidence.
Hmm.
Farhan wa dalil, that is the right of the Muslim.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I really appreciate that. I wanted to talk, and we're coming to an end here, but I did want to just talk about resources and support. And so a lot of times, like I said, people navigate this, and I think it's very true to what you said, and you guys know this better than anyone, that a lot of times people do navigate this in isolation. And sometimes there's a lot of shame attached, and like, who do you go to for help? Sometimes there's shaming in the community. You should have known, you should have seen the red flags, all of that kind of comes with it. And sometimes people isolate. And that's, like you said, you're supposed to do the opposite of that. So what are some resources, support, steps that people should be taking in order to better navigate this challenge?
There's also, of course, therapy, but beyond that, I
Yes.
believe one of the most successful uh, routes that we have seen is people joining um, com- groups, community groups. We've had contact with the online group, with the online community, a group of, I'm gonna say what, maybe about 80 couples,
Mm-hmm.
where they come together and they support each other through this process. And they have been very open about, I mean, they talk about each other right there, online.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other couples also immediately rally behind them. And we've seen this. I think that has been one of the greatest things, is finding people, communities. And it may be better to do an online one, or so, or one that's distant, where you remove the threat of
Mm-hmm.
seeing someone I know.
Or shame
It,
or judgment.
right. We've seen great success with that. So that would be one of the first things that I would recommend. Um, the other thing that I would say, make some, if you're talking about healing, let me ask you this. Is this for someone who leaves the marriage or stays in the marriage?
If it's okay, if you could for both, if you could offer, yeah.
Um, if you um, choose to stay in the marriage, make concise decisions about what recovery is going to look like. What
Okay.
is it that I want the marriage to look like now? Because the marriage that you had before, you don't want that one back.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got y'all here, regardless of who's at fault. That got
Right.
y'all here. So now we have to create a new one. Well, what are the conditions for? What is it that I'm looking for you from you differently? How is it that I want to see empathy and remorse from you? Because you're doing it, but I don't see it because you're doing it wrong. So, what will recovery look like for someone who decides to leave the union? I would. I need to add something else to that too. Now, sometimes we have seen couples deal with infidelity and a child coming from that. That one I would definitely say one of the first things is individual therapy, because I have seen some very deep rooted issues, though it very often those couples struggle the longest
Yeah.
when there's a
A
child.
child that comes into play, because that's going to always be a reminder.
Right.
Um, but back to the person who decides to leave in regard to their healing, again, being mindful that this is a loss, and two, you did nothing to cause it. There is nothing you could have done to prevent it. There's nothing that you did to to bring it on.
Yeah. Acceptance. Wow. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it. I know sometimes when these things occur, if you're not careful, if you're not following the steps that you just suggested, it can really have long-term effects on a person's self-esteem and sense of self-worth and even identity. Like sometimes some of us may lose our sense of identity, who we are, and we don't always have the resources to hold on to. So I also want to just remind people that prayer is just such a powerful tool as well. That tahajjud prayer, that one-on-one, is extremely powerful. If sometimes you see like the resources are just not accessible for you. SubhanAllah. Are there things that if a person just cannot access a therapist, financial reasons, any of those sort of challenges, are there a few tips that they can do to bunker down until they are able to access therapy? So they don't
Um, if I had nothing else, if I were in this situation, if I had absolutely nothing else and I had no money, I would go to a bereavement group at a church.
Why?
Um, One, because it's going to be about grief and about the loss and recovering from that loss, because this feels like a death.
Right.
That's the death of many things here. And I say a church because honestly, that's usually where they held at.
Right.
When
right.
I drive through, that's where I see the signs for those types of support groups. So that would be what I would do if I did absolutely nothing else. The other thing is,
and maybe in conjunction with that, I will say that somebody like Dope Muslima, podcast, or your organization, getting with somebody to be able to hold those type of groups,
just safe spaces. Yeah.
right,
right,
and feed that
right,
to yourself as often as you possibly can. Listen to the podcast, listen to the lecture, while you're cooking, feed yourself, something, because your thoughts will take
Mm.
you to many different places. Someone else mentioned something else, and which is, of course, journaling, because you get to tell your story of your experience.
right.
Because there are two different versions that have occurred here about the same event.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you are able to tell your narrative as authentically as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And I do believe in this technological age now, we have more ways of having resources than we probably before.
Ever did. Yeah.
And even from your home or off your devices or whatever, there are groups out there that you actually can engage without a cost being incurred. So if that is, it may take you to do a little more research, but worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A great example of it is, as early entrepreneurs, being broke and not being able to pay for things that we needed, and having to totally learn a new skill set so we
Right.
can get through business humps. We have spent hours in front of this computer, and sometimes Hassan fell asleep, but trying to get it from as many free sources as we possibly could. And so
Right.
we do it in other places is because
Mhm.
we did it because we were going to get some benefit from it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so you do it for so many other things. Do it for your head and your heart.
Exactly.
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. Thank you so much for that. I wanted to just tap into you guys as a resource. I just put the ticker on the bottom, but how can people access you, as well as what are resources currently that you guys are offering? I know there's a couple of things that you guys got going on right now.
As soon as I do the landing page, within the next 48 hours, we'll be offering our class on overcoming betrayal. And again, we want to emphasize that for us, betrayal can mean many, many things, including infidelity, because the steps are, I won't say that, yes, the steps for overcoming are the same. The conversations that you would have with the person may be different. I may say things to my spouse, that I that I wouldn't, with a family member. But
Right.
for us, it will be all different types of betrayal.
Right. And so you can, until then, you can definitely follow us on hashtag that clay couple, and
Mhm.
our
Be able to
website.
find
You'll
it.
be able to find it in our website, www.thatclaycouple.com, or even shoot us an email at info@thatclaycouple.com.
Perfect. And you also have a book, which kind of
Mm.
gets people on the right track before choosing a partner, right?
Yes.
It's okay. Tell us a little bit.
It is not infidelity proof, but it is called Selection Perfection, a rock solid
Premarital
guide
guide
for you.
Mhm.
And our goal here is, we created the book that we would have liked to have had.
Mhm.
Mm.
We know what the obstacles that we had in regard to trying to get through making sure we got married, and we saw what worked for us. We saw the gaps that were out there with with other couples. We also saw the things that people were not noticing and were not talking about, because we think of premarital as before sex,
Yeah.
um, before y'all start dating, before y'all start spending the night together, before you introduce your kids. No, that's not happening.
Mhm.
You already got a child, and you Muslim, and y'all are having premarital sex, or maybe even y'all live together and you're Muslim. And so
Mm.
we're having those types of conversations, because we have to redefine this. We beyond the sit down stage. These people been
Right.
sitting down, but they've been sitting down on top of each other.
We're not sitting down no more. We're not doing traditional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
We're
different.
dating. We're dating. Yeah.
But we're gonna have you have to have those conversations
Mhm.
about how do you get to the point of not losing your common sense because of how sex has blinded you.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much for that resource. I'm going to ask this last question by
Sure.
this individual from YouTube. She just said, "What do you do if your spouse was having a secret affair and starts a small business with another, I guess, another spouse?"
That's for you to decide what it is that you want to do with that level of betrayal. We won't tell you what it is, but it comes down to this. You've got two options, and I don't know where you are, where the person, because I don't even know if it's you. There are two options, and
Mhm.
the offending party has to make that decision. Do I stay or do I go? That's the first step. And I
Yep.
know you're asking, well, what is it that I do? Make that decision first.
Right.
Are you going to stay, or are you going to leave?
Because each one of those things are going to have
That
its own,
a different and
right, a different way of, you have to deal with it. So you got to figure out what it is what you want to do, and then we can start working from that position there. And if that's the case, you figure out what you want to do, contact us after that. Then we can work with
Right.
you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug. Okay.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for an amazing.
either one of those are hard. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
Either one of
right.
those
Those
are
are
hard.
hard. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
which hard are you
So
willing
you to deal
to
with.
quit?
Choose your poison
Absolutely.
at this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank that Clay couple for an amazing, amazing show, and just giving us the raw, honest truth, as well as just resource to help support us with accepting and owning that truth. Thank you to the audience member. So sorry, you should say it makes me say alhamdulillah for being single. You know. But thank you guys, mashallah. The key here is not just to sort of harp on like cheating and things like that, but it really is to sort of find a safe space, as we heard our brother and sister just talking about, to talk about things that are typically shameful, we tend to run from, we self-isolate from, and being able to find a safe space. But not only that, to have a hand to reach out for help. We want our community to have resources. We want us to be supported by us. You know, there are Black mental health professionals in our community, not just Black, but Muslim, Black, however culturally appropriate you need, then we want to make sure that we are tapping into that, inshallah ta'ala. But thank you guys so much. We come back. Thank you guys. May Allah bless you. Thank you. May Allah bless both of you. Alhamdulillah. We are coming back next week, family, with Saving Our Black Boys. This is a conversation with Safe Institute, the founders of Safe Institute, Atiba Jones, and I think Nail Salahuddin. And we also have 3 amazing young men who have went through the program. And we're going to talk really about what our young Black men need in today's time based on the challenges that are facing them. And so it'll be a really dope conversation. So come back next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to have that amazing conversation. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. Thank you to the amazing Clay couple. We'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.